A very good morning to all of you. How are you, dear students? I hope you are doing well. Let's start today's lecture without any pause. French society had been experiencing inequality and injustice during late 18th century. France was ruled by Louis XVI, who was an extravagant and inexperienced king. French society was divided in three states, namely first, second, and third. First state comprised clergy and religious men. Second state comprised nobility and ruler, and the last one comprised businessmen, lawyers, officials, farmers, laborers, and artisans. It was only third state that paid taxes, and amount of taxes was so high sometimes that it broke its economical backbone. A very bad condition took place when amount of taxes got doubled, and the reason was that France helped 13 American colonies against British. France spent more than 1 billion French currency lires in that war. On the other hand, Louis XVI was an extravagant ruler who spent money without stop on his luxury and comfort. Moneylenders benefited from that opportunity and charged 10% interest on loans given to the monarch. Therefore, Louis XVI increased amount of taxes for paying debt without any financial problem that made French people more disappointed and disenchanted with the government. The second reason of that disappointment was that first and second states were exempted from paying any kind of taxes. A very interesting fact was that church itself used to impose and collect a very special kind of tax called tithes on common people. Farmers had to pay 1/10 of agricultural produce to the church, and apart from this tax, they also paid a direct tax to the government called taille. Rightly speaking, they were caught in the spider web of nobility, and that condition has been depicted in The Spider and the Fly, a very famous painting of that time, in which a nobleman was shown as a spider and a peasant as fly. It is a short glimpse of old French society known as Old Regime in the history of France that continued till 1789. Subsistence crisis refers to a situation when people of a country even cannot earn their basic livelihood. This crisis took place in France before 1789 during Old Regime. These were common reasons behind that subsistence crisis. Number one, rapid growth in the population. Population of France rose from 23 millions in 1715 to 20 millions in 1789. This situation led to sharp increase in the demand of food grains. It could be achieved only by a good harvest, but farmers could not produce sufficient food grains to meet actual need of the nation. That made situation of France more difficult and critical. Second, rapid increase in the price of common food items. Due to lack of sufficient availability of food grains in the market, piece of goods rose rapidly that hit workers and laborers very badly. Mid-18th century witnessed rise of a social group in France called middle class. This class was not a separate class, rather it was a new and broad version of third state. It comprised businessmen, lawyers, and officials. They started speaking up against discrimination and equality after reading books like Two Treatises of the Government written by an English philosopher, John Locke, The Social Contract authored by a Swiss writer, Rousseau, and The Spirit of the Laws written by a French ideologist, Montesquieu. John Locke strongly and vehemently rejected the idea that monarch had divine right to rule a country, while Rousseau carried forward the idea of social contract. He wrote that governance was a social contract between government and citizens of a country. People in the government were nothing but representative of the citizens, and Montesquieu gave idea of the separation of power. He envisaged and anticipated a country where power would be divided between institutions so that no one could enjoy absolute authority. These ideas got huge welcome in France as they were based on equality, accountability, justice, and merit. Thank you. Bye for now.